So you've decided to cook at home instead of order out. Every now and then, the ingredients you're going to need require opening a can of something like tuna, tomato sauce, or maybe a can of beans. If you happen to be lucky enough to buy a can that has one of these tabs that you can use to lift the top off and not have to worry about a can opener, then you're fine. However, you better find a hardware store or someplace that sells can openers and have one in your kitchen drawer, because sooner or later you're going to have to learn how to use a can opener. So let's start from what a can opener is made of. It has two handles and it has a twisty thing that turns the inside around. The purpose of that is for it to turn this gear that grips the lip of the can and run this sharp part over the top of the can and open it for you. How does that do that? Every can that doesn't have a tab, like this type of can or this type of can, has a top and a bottom. The bottom is round. You can't really use a can opener on this. The top is flat. You see this part that's very flat? That's where your can opener is going to go around and around and cut the metal to separate it from the can itself. The way that works is you take your can opener, right? You open it up like this, and you have to put the cutting part here, okay? And then once you pinch this, the cutting part goes into the metal part, and the metal part opens. You hear a little hissing noise. That means the can has just opened up. Just remember, when you cut this open, you are literally creating a sharp object out of the top of this can. So be very careful, okay? Now, how do you actually do this job? I'm going to pause and show you from the top how this works. Okay, the idea here is to take this lip that you see here and go around it with a cutting part of the can opener. The cutting part of the can opener is this part. So this is going to be on the top of the can. This is the part that grabs the bottom of this lip and turns the can around. So you have to remember, the cutting part is on the top. Always do the cutting part on the top. The idea is to pinch the two handles so that we can puncture the top of the can so that we can turn the blade over the top of this can. And the way this works is this part, the gear part that turns, this gear part that turns, grabs this part of the can and turns the can around. And the function of the cutting part is to attach to that gear as the gear is turning to turn the blade over the top of the can. Okay? So that's what you're trying to do. Put the cutting part on the top of the can, just like this, and make sure the gear part grabs the bottom of the can. You see how I'm doing this? So the gear part is attached to this ridge, and the cutting part is going to go through the top of the can. Now, make sure if this is working, I can hold it with one hand, okay? And the idea here is once that's correctly placed, once the blade is inside of this lip and the bottom is grabbed by the turning gear, I press these two handles enough to open the top of the can. I'm going to show you how that works. I'm going to press these two with my hands together. And when I do that, like a pair of scissors, the top of the can is going to open up because this blade is very sharp. Again, be very careful. Don't mess around with this edge. This is a very sharp tool. It's meant to cut metal, okay? So now pay attention. I'm going to cut this. You see that? We just went right through the can. If I take this and show it to you, you see, I've cut into the can with the cutting part by pressing these two together, okay? Now, the easy part of this is to just keep turning and turning, keeping these two handles together tight so that when you turn, the gears will turn the can as it's cutting. Nope. Notice the top of the can is now opening. You see this? The top of the can is now opening. As I turn, the can turns. Now, normally you would do this on top of the table, not in the air, but I have to do this so that I can show you what I'm doing in the right angle. But I keep turning this and carefully reaching the other end of the circle. Now, usually what you could do is cut all the way through. So this piece comes right off. It's detached. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave just enough so that I can just lift this top carefully, because this edge is now very sharp. Lift it up carefully so I can use the content of this can, which is tomato sauce. That's how you use a can opener. Very easy. Now, what do I do now? Well, I'm going to open the handles, and when you do that, it lets go of the top of the can. And look what I have. Now, very carefully, this edge is very sharp. Carefully, with something, maybe a fork or something, you can lift the top off. Don't mess around with this edge. This is a very sharp piece of metal. Empty the container, okay? And once you're done with the container, close the top so that the next person, maybe the person picking up the can for recycling or whatever, doesn't cut their hands. Empty the container, close the top back in very gently, and throw it out, okay? Now, if you do this with a can of tuna, obviously the inside of this can is gonna smell like fish. You really don't want to empty this tuna can and then leave it in the recycling bin. Rinse the inside so that the smell doesn't overwhelm your neighbors or yourself or whatever. But basically, that's how you open a can using a can opener. Okay, so I just emptied the contents of this tomato can into a bowl that I'm going to use later for cooking. But look what I've ended up with. Okay, this is sharp. The inside is sharp. You don't want somebody else touching this and cutting themselves. You don't want yourself to cut yourself. So what I would usually do is rinse the inside so there's no smell and there's no chance of ants and roaches and animals getting into it. And then very gently with one finger, press the top of this back inside. Okay, that way the danger of someone cutting themselves when they pick this up to recycle it or throw it out or something is much less. Okay, always remember the can opener is a requirement in the kitchen. You have to have one of these in your kitchen. Sometimes you need to open a can of tuna. Sometimes you need it for, a can of beans that you need. You really can't do without a can opener in your kitchen. Have one in your kitchen. Talk to you later.